r/ask Reddit. What had so much hype about it, but was actually terrible? The 2012 Apocalypse update. I did not anticipate this being that popular, but I guess at the current time, 46,000 plus people who made this my most popular comment of all time. Thanks also to whoever donated gold and silver. Y'all are some real ones. The entire 2012 apocalypse was just bad logic to me. It was the end of the Mayan calendar. What's more likely? They predicted the end of the world, or they looked at each other and said, hey, we're 1,000 years ahead. Should we call it a day and get some drinks? I had a professor in college who was of indigenous Mexican descent, and someone asked her about the predicted end of the world. This was around 2010. Her response was, well, the Mayans were creating the calendar and expanding it out into the future. And around the time they were at 2012, there was a massive Spanish invasion and their society collapsed. That is just where they happened to be at that time. Edit. Getting a lot of messages about the timeline of Mayan civilization, causes of their collapse, and specifics about the quote. This is a 10-year-old memory, but the point remains. Mayans stopped creating the calendar upon the collapse of their civilization, and at that time they had reached 2012. Google Glass got a lot of hype, but then it was gone. Back when Google Glass had beta testers, I met a guy at a conference that was a tester. It seemed kind of cool at first, but I found myself being weirded out with every conversation we had. Imagine knowing someone who is always holding their phone up as if they're constantly recording everything you do. Are you gonna feel comfortable talking to that person, or are you gonna be wondering if and why they're recording everything and what they're gonna do with those videos? That's the feeling that Google Glass gave me from the other end, and I feel like Google really didn't understand how weird it was to be on the outside looking in. That's why restaurants were banning them. I feel like hoverboards were seriously misnamed. I expected Back to the Future, not Back to the Hospital with bone fractures. My defining memory of those things is of a slack-jawed, overweight 12-year-old rolling past, not a glimmer of sapience in his eyes, with Gucci Gang playing at full volume on his phone's shitty speaker. Edit. I am in awe of how many people this resonated with, and I wish I could find that mouth-breathing boy and tell him. That description is just beautiful. TED. Back in the early 2000s, billboards went up all over Denver saying TED is coming, are you ready for TED? And a whole bunch of other cryptic TED stuff. Nobody knew who or what TED was. It escalated to the point everyone was talking about TED. Turns out TED was an airline. It lasted like a month and failed. Everyone is saying Gabo this and Gabo that. Gabo Gabo. Geraldo Rivera opening Al Capone's safe. That's the guy from The Witcher, right? Edit. Please guys, know this is the dumbest thing I've ever said. That's Geralt of Rivia. You're thinking about the 38th President of the United States. Quibi. I saw ads and promotions for it constantly for months leading up to its release, and they had some pretty famous celebrities in the shows. Then it disappeared after like a month of its release. The company I worked for at the time offered a choice. Free Netflix or free Quibi. After looking at thousands of accounts, I saw one that had chosen Quibi over Netflix. And that person probably already had Netflix. Game of Thrones Season 8. So much bullshit, and that show meant nothing in the end. Like the writers were just writing episode to episode as they were shooting them. Just an example. Sam stealing his father's sword for absolutely no goddamn reason. The whole last season was a slew of Chekhov's guns never being fired. Adulthood. I'd like a refund. Adulthood would be fine if they would let you re-spend the points you had to allocate to your starting attributes and skills before you got to finish the tutorial. Google+. I met my husband on Google+, which is pretty embarrassing to explain to people. That's actually a really cool anecdote. Lavas from the transition period. Fire Festival. https://www.bbc.com News Newsbeat 46,904,445. Shout out to the one time there was a dude who went on record to say he was the only dude who enjoyed Fire Festival because he won the ability to go in a giveaway, and seeing a bunch of rich snobs in misery was incredibly funny to him. Chicken soup for my middle class soul is how he put it. I think he won it on an office raffle or something. 2020. Remember that meme showing how all the holidays were on weekends? At least Cinco de Mayo was on Taco Tuesday and the whole entire month of April was 420 instead of just a day. Halloween was on a full moon as well and on a Saturday. No Man's Sky at launch. Granted, it did got a lot better afterwards. The redemption arc for No Man's Sky is surreal. Better plot than most movies. I love how the game has evolved for me personally. At first I was doing the missions and got pretty bored with it, but then they added the ability to make your own base. So then it became a base building game. Then I found out about the Galactic Hub, where players claimed a certain selection of planets with a home base. I made it my mission to find it. It took an incredible amount of time and became this kind of adventure puzzle game where I was looking up stuff on the internet about how to find certain black holes so I could warp closer to the hub. But eventually I made it, and found a shit ton of planets with bases. Some active but a lot of them dead. By then, the game had the ability to harvest valuable minerals indefinitely with solar energy, so I hopped around from one planet to the next, scrounging empty bases looking for a big payday. The game became like this treasure hunting space scavenger game. It's been a fantastic journey. Connie 2012. Proof that it does take a little more than awareness to solve the world's problems. The only thing I remember about Connie 2012 was that the guy who started the movement had a mental breakdown and stripped down naked in public. 2020. 2021 was supposed to rock after 2020 and it most definitely has not. But at least it's moist. Olestra was a fat substitute that had no calories. Chips would have no fat content and less calories. It was a craze until they realized it gave everyone the shits. Like for some people a few handful were enough for explosive zero warning uncontainable shits. The news called it anal leakage. D. I distinctly remember bags of chips, Lay's I think, that actually had warning, may cause anal leakage printed on them near the nutrition facts. Anthem. The flight mechanics and Iron Man-ish badass feeling of huge explosions and gameplay is so damn cool to have just let it rot in a gutter. What a waste. Such potential. I know someone who is a voice actor who voiced a character in Anthem. They pretty much said that it was great to be in the booth recording the lines. The director was very encouraging and was saying how great the performance was and how they're going to get some great animation for the character. Once the game was out, my friend looked up their character on YouTube to find their performance was paired with some generic looped animation that didn't really match the character at all. They were quite disappointed. I assume there were some budget cuts mid-production. Not only were there budget cuts, there were major changes going on throughout the entire development process, including the name and the entire story of the game. It was originally supposed to be called Beyond, but shortly before they announced it there were some copyright issues. I think most of the people working on the game still had no idea why it was even being called Anthem all of a sudden, and they were just told to work with it. It also wasn't originally meant to be a looter shooter either, which is pretty clearly evident when you look at just how ridiculously bad the entire loot system was. They were definitely rushed into all kinds of stuff that just kept changing too fast for them to deal with. SpongeBob Sweet Victory music but got switched to Travis Scott sicko mode in the Super Bowl. That one hockey rink's got you covered. The Dallas Stars. Segways. Not necessarily terrible, but incredible. Over the top hype. Interestingly though, Segways paved the way for a host of other personal electric vehicles, especially self-balancing ones. If I recall correctly, the guy behind it was coming off of his previous invention, a wheelchair that can climb up and down stairs and raise the user to a standing position so they don't have to be looking up at the rest of us humans all of the time or need as much custom stuff around. Low counters, sinks, stovetops, etc. When he said that he was working on something new and revolutionary, venture capitalists were tripping over each other to give him money. That one pizza party specifically in our elementary school. Like 8 boxes of pizza and they limit us to 2 slices each. But each slice was actually one regular slice cut in half. And no seconds. Even though there's 4 untouched boxes. Yeah, duck that. Why did you have to invoke such a pure, raw anger? Some years back, there was some a-hole that hyped up a huge live event of him being eaten by a snake in a digestion-proof suit. I thought it was incredibly stupid, but kept hearing about from co-workers. Day after the event, I hear he bleached out as it was working on swallowing him. So they had to kill the snake to save his dumb ass. Edit. It was Eating Alive, a Discovery Channel special. The guy was Paul Rosalie, and supposedly the snake did not get killed. He had to make the snake defend itself to even attack him, as it wasn't interested in him when he acted like prey. I remember that shit. So far this is the only one of these hype things I actually paid attention to. Eaten Alive. It was more of a publicity stunt to raise awareness for the destruction of the Amazon and its conservation. The host wore a suit that could withstand an anaconda's grip, but he took the padding off his arms for mobility issues. They got a captive anaconda to wrap around the host, but he tapped out cause he said it felt like his bones were about to break without the padding protecting him. Mini CDs. I was stationed in Japan and had one over there. It was awesome. I could put like 5 hours of music on one disc, and they were so small and compact and easy to carry a bunch around. You're thinking of mini disc, and the parent comment are two probably. Two different things. Mini CDs are literally just a CD but with the outer couple inches chopped off. If you've ever noticed the smaller inner circle in a CD drive tray, that's what that's for. They hold like 20 meters of music. Edit. Same size as a Gamma Cube disc BTW, just those are DVD instead of CD. Raiding Area 51. The Naruto runner made it all just stupid funny. It was all just stupid to begin with. They can't stop all of us. Yes they can. Floyd Mayweather vs Logan Paul. Glad I didn't pay for it. I remember there was one part where it looked like Mayweather knocked Paul out, but he held him up to keep going. That had so many people annoyed ASL. 26/MNY but IDK what it has to do with the rest of your comment. Suicide Squad. Movie was so hyped like it was the second coming of Jesus. Then we saw Leto LOL. I am not into superhero movies, and the hype got to me. We went, and we were perplexed the entire time. Then I was validated because everyone else was confused too. Then came the memes. When the fire guy sacrificed himself and called them family, I was like, how? You knew each other for like an hour and there was no character development at all. I'm not critical of movies, but even I walked out at the end knowing it was bad. Harry Potter and the Cursed Child. Awful, and I don't actually believe it's part of HP. Basically everything after the last movie has been them milking the franchise and ruining it. New game looks good though. Basically everything after the last movie has been them milking the franchise and ruining it. New game looks good though. I feel like this is how Browns fans think. The live action remake of The Lion King, it had no soul. It was terrible. The Lion King in the early 90s was my favorite movie as a kid. I was so disappointed in the new one. And I usually love whatever Jon Favreau does. To that point, the live action of Mulan was also awful. It's almost like they should stop remaking animations into live actions. The Power Glove. If you weren't there at the time, you can't imagine how awesome those kids thought that this thing was going to be. Then you finally played something with one, and tried to convince yourself that it was indeed awesome before slowly, oh so slowly, accepting that it was lame as hell. Then having to memorize the codes you needed to type in on the glove, otherwise it wouldn't work. So might to realize it didn't work regardless, so you just yank it off and use the pad on the glove because, ironically, it was better than your existing controller which had the sticky fire button. Lucky I never paid for the damn thing. Picked it up at a garage sale for $15 a year after it came out. I could see why it was found at a garage sale. I ended up taking it apart to see why it sucked but broke it and threw it out. Wish I'd have kept it. They go for decent cash on eBay these days. Surprised no one said Cyberpunk 2077. Though I guess that's a given. TBH, Cyberpunk was the first thing that came to my mind. It was incredibly hyped and then quite disappointing. But I waited a couple of patches and played through and actually enjoyed it. It's nothing close to the game we were promised and it still has problems. But terrible it is not. Edit. For transparency, I've got a pretty powerful PC which this game seems to need. I think it would be fair to say the last gen console experience was terrible. Maybe an unpopular opinion, but when I was turning 18, the legal adult age to drink in Canada, I was hyped about clubbing and parties and bar hopping, only to find out it's way more of a pain than it's worth. You go out and spend $100 or more on watered down expensive ass drinks and shitty music, then walk in the freezing cold to the next place. Plus the Uber/taxi home. Not worth it. Not to mention you can totally forget having any kind of conversation with anyone because you can't hear over the music. So, like everyone else, you just pretend to hear what everyone else is saying. It's so stupid. Those Google glasses, whatever happened to them? Google, Microsoft, Apple, and Facebook have all gotten patents on them in the last 2 years. It's coming. Good, now I can record my bosses saying stupid things and no one will know. It's a lot less obvious than holding up a phone. New Year's Eve, every year. Anthem video game. F in the chat for my buddy who dropped $90 on a shiny disc. Hands across America. My mom was a teacher in LA when this happened. She said the school she worked at organized buses to Skid Row in downtown LA. I guess to show solidarity with the homeless. She said after the long chain of hand holding and it was over, a man experiencing homelessness asked, "Am I supposed to feel different now?" I was like 8 when this happened. In the 80s you could do things like bus elementary children to Skid Row for the day. Area 51 raid. Still can't believe a human being ran Naruto style through the desert toward a military base. I mean, that guy actually exists. The McRib from McDonald's. It tastes like something I had in my high school cafeteria. I feel like this has some sort of psychological trick behind its marketing. It goes away for long enough that you convince yourself there must be something special about it. Then you eat it and it's pretty black, so you quickly forget about it. Until a few years go by and it comes back and you're like, wasn't this good? I can't remember. But something must be special about it. I think I need to at least try it again. Rinse and repeat. Being a grown up. Edit. Thanks for all the feedback. Y'all. You do make some incredible points about economic freedom, agency, and buying all the Lego sets you could want. Having way more household chores and involvement with corporate America really fueled my answer. I love knowing adulthood has brought many of you so much joy. Keep trucking, fellow Redditors. My album. Having a bachelor's degree. It used to be something special and not everyone had one. The issue is that universities have been incentivized to increase enrollment and graduation rates so that everyone can get a university education. While I agree that a more educated population is beneficial to society, it has made a bachelor's too common and it seems like everyone has to spend an extra 4 years in school just to be employable. Most jobs don't even need one to do the work. You just need one to beat the other candidates. A master's has become what a bachelor's was, and a bachelor's is what high school used to be. Even a PhD is starting to lose value from so many people having them in jobs that don't need them. To become a prof in most fields now you have to do a postdoc unless you are one of the best PhD graduates in the field that year. Woodstock 99. Gabbo. Well kids, this is where you would watch Itchy and Scratchy, except they're on the Gabbo show now. So, here's Eastern Europe's favorite cat and mouse team, Worker and Parasite. Fire Festival. We all saw the documentary and what Andy was willing to do to get water released. The Star Wars sequel trilogy. Fire Festival. Non-fungible token. It's worse than shit. The XFL. I was a huge wrestling fan and I'm still a big football fan, so I was expecting fun and exciting. Then I tuned in for the first night of the season. Terrible football, all hot air and no excitement led to a lot of disappointment. I tried to stay with it, assuming it would get better. Then I just gave up. What a waste. My life. I was told that because I am smart, I will eventually grow up to do great things. Nope, I'm just your average Redditor. Flume. It was that early 2000s toy that looked really fun on TV, but then we got it and it fell apart almost instantly. Whoa, you made it to the end? You're a ducking beast. I'll cut you a deal. Smash like and subscribe for more curated content, bruh. It's free and that's a great price.